Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to your weekly episode of the AAA Hole Podcast. I, of course, am your AAA Hole Death Witch, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Aussie the Aussie, everybody. Say hey, Aussie.
G'day, guys.
So, I am just, I know I said I was done with this last week, but last time, I'm going to be done with it after this week. So, this is the last time I talk about it.
Until next week.
No, this is it. This is it. I swear this is it. This is the last time, because I've planned it out. I'm going to get it all off my chest and just go ahead and clear the air, because I thought I was done, and then I went to browsing YouTube, and I found just video after video. And I apologize if I cough a lot during this podcast. I am getting over a virus, flu, or something here. But anyway, so I just see video after video of people just freaking out about Google Stadia. And I see a lot of misquotes about the technology, a lot of misunderstanding about how it works, and a lot of just what feels like fear-mongering for just seemingly no reason. And I'm trying to wrap my head around it, because for the longest time, gamers in the gaming industry have been screaming for change. It's what we want. We want change. We are tired of the microtransactions. We're tired of the loot boxes. We're tired of $60 games with $50 season passes and then DLCs and microtransactions and loot boxes mixed into them and all these things that we're sick of, and just our wallets and our pockets feeling like bottomless pits that they just keep sucking all our money out of. On top of that, you got to buy all the hardware to go with it. You got to buy your console. So there's a good $400 or $500 right there. If you're a PC gamer, go ahead and drop $1,000 if you want a good PC to keep up with this. And then yearly, you're going to have to buy a new video card yearly or bi-yearly to try to keep up with everything. We're expected to sink a lot of money into gaming. So we scream for change. And knock on the door comes Google with Stadia, which on its surface seems to have a lot of people worried. But I can't help wonder what the fuck it is people are worried about. Because if it does all the things they claim it's going to do, and I'll get into the business side of things, but let's start with the technological side of things. If it does everything they say it's going to do, this is that game changer you guys have been wanting. It's offering you the ability to play on any device. No need for purchasing hardware. So there goes your hardware cost out the fucking window. $400 or $500 of your budget can now go towards games. Just right off the bat. 2, they're promising 1080p, which, believe it or not, I know everybody's all the rage about 4K when they're making these videos about Google Stadia, but let's look at the numbers. The majority of gamers still game in 1080p. Now I'm including console and console, Switch. Everybody. Switch doesn't even do 4K. So the majority of people are pretty fucking happy with 1080p. Streamers stream in 1080p. People watch their videos in 1080p. I mean, you can even look at those numbers on Netflix. People don't typically stream 4K content as often as they do 1080p content. Even on Netflix, even on your movie services that are equipped for it. It hasn't caught on yet the way that, HD caught on over SD back in the day. This is going to be more of a gradual change, and we're not there yet. So if we stick with 1080p, Google can deliver that at 25 megabits a second and 60 frames per second with no input lag. Now that's what they're promising, and apparently that is the exact thing they demoed at E3. And I watched a lot of videos of people who got their hands on it at E3 too. And every one of them said the same thing. That they were impressed with it. That it felt like they were, some people played the Xbox One version of Doom Immortal the day before, and then the next day got to play the same game on Google Stadia. And most of them said they couldn't tell a difference. That they were actively looking for ways to tell that the streaming version wasn't as good as the Xbox One version. And most of them said that they either couldn't tell, or if they could, it was to the point where if they noticed something, they couldn't tell if they were actually noticing a difference or if it was all in their head. One of those mental things where when you're looking for something hard enough, you start finding it in places it's not there. And that's the feeling some of them got. So if it's good enough that it doesn't immediately stand out to you, and it's comparable to a full console purchase game, then this is something you should be excited about. And at 25 megabits a second, the next worry I see in these all of these videos over and over again is, who is this service for? You know, broadband, the infrastructure just isn't there in America. Broadband, the infrastructure just isn't there in America. 25 megabits per second is available to over 80% of America right now. There are very few places in the country, and I'm including Alaska here, and Hawaii, which is a fucking island. So I'm including those like offshore places that are hard to get to. And you still have above an 80% margin for 25 megabits a second. Even bumfucking nowhere places can get more than that. My dad lives out in the fucking sticks. Okay, so I can think of two places off the top of my head. One, both very remote rural places in the South here in America that one has it, one doesn't. All right, so my dad lives out in the sticks, out in the woods, miles away from a town. You got to drive 10 to 15 minutes to get to anything where he lives. And he still gets about 100 down. That's about the max he can do, is just 100. But he still gets cable to his house. Like, he still gets 100. Even if you can't get cable, and this is where I'll go to the other example, my in-laws live in a fucking swamp like Shrek. I'm serious. They're so far out there, like it's like driving through the hills have eyes type shit before you get to their house. And once you're there, they don't get cable. They don't get DSL. They don't get nothing out there. Satellite was their only option. And you can't game on satellite. Even though satellite technically does 25 megabits down, it has a ping time of at least 600. And it's impossible for satellite to get a ping time of less than 600 milliseconds. Because that's the fucking speed of light. So until we learn how to send data faster than the speed of light, it's never going to happen. So your only option for gaming out in the swamp where where my wife's parents live is a mobile hotspot, 4G. Now Verizon, they do get Verizon service out there. 2 bars, it's not full bars, but even on that, I was getting around 25 to 30 on average, because I bought that when I carry that hotspot with me anytime I go out there, so I can have my own private connection. So even out in the middle of nowhere, as long as you still got fucking cell phone service, as long as you still got a 4G signal, you still have access to Google Stadia. Now, the next argument that comes up, now that we've debunked that one, the next argument that comes up is data caps. And I won't say what cable company I contract for, but I do contract for a cable company for work, and they do have data caps. Now, that data cap is 1 terabyte a month. So I've seen the numbers firsthand. When I get calls from gamers who got happy during a Steam sale and bought too many games and went over their data cap, or happy during a PSN sale or an Xbox One sale. People who bought new games. Now, these are physical media games when they're buying them on console, and they're still going over their data cap. They're still coming close to that. First of all, 1 terabyte a month is pretty fucking generous. Pretty hard to get that with just streaming. When I look at the people streaming, when the counts come through and I'm looking through people's account and checking their usage history, when accounts come through with people who say they don't game, they just watch Netflix all the time. That's all, you know, they don't have television service. Everything they watch is streamed, and they just stream constantly. I specifically ask those people if they're streaming in 4K because I'm genuinely curious. I'm doing my own little survey here, and they're unaware of it. And a lot of people that stream at 4K and talk about they stream, 4 or 5 hours a night when they get off work in 4K, just, watching TV with their wife or whatever, come nowhere close to the data cap compared to the gamers who have to download full games and then download patches and then download, DLC and season passes. So all that stuff comes into play. That's all the stuff that they don't mention, that you don't take into account, that you don't think about with the way you currently game. And the way you currently game still uses a lot of data. So even if you were streaming at 4K at the speeds they promise they can deliver 4K, 35 megabits a second. Because I can't remember which channel it was I saw it on. I was going to put video clips in this, but I didn't want to call out any specific channel. But there's been some bad numbers floating around. So one guy apparently, quote unquote, did the math, and I could tell that he knows nothing about how this works. His math is off. I don't know what he's basing it on, but he claimed that if you were doing an hour worth of 4K streaming video game content on Google Stadia, you would be using 10 gigabytes an hour of your data, which is wildly inaccurate. I mean, I can pull up a calculator right now and do the math. So they offer, they offer you Google Stadia, 4K streaming, at speeds of...
I can learn to understand you much better
if I... Shut up, Cortana. Good God, I just want the calculator on my computer, please. Oh, God, I hate this new update for Windows. Apologize for that, guys. Okay, so they're promising 4K at a speed of 35 megabits per second. Now, that channel apparently was doing his math, was trying to factor in the video stream and the controller stream and the input stream, and he's overthinking the absolute fuck out of it, to the point that he's getting false numbers. 35 megabits a second is 35 megabits a second. Doesn't matter what the fuck you're doing with it. That's a speed. Speed doesn't change because you changed a delivery method. Okay, 65 miles an hour on the highway is 65 miles an hour on the highway. It doesn't matter if you're driving a truck or car. It's the same fucking speed. Doesn't matter how you're delivering that speed. A speed is a speed. It's a unit of measurement. So at 35, even if you're using all 35 megabits per second, of your speed, of your internet speed, just for Google Stadia, even if it uses every bit your connection will give it. So 35 megabits a second, all right, times 60 seconds, all right, that's it's 2100. So now that times 60 for another hour. So you're getting, let's see, 1.2 gig an hour. That's a tenth of what his math was. It's good for megabits to megabytes and for megabytes to gigabytes. So at 126,000 megabytes, that's 1.2 gigabytes an hour of your internet speed. And that's if Google uses every last bit of it. Uses all 35 megabits per second for your internet speed. All right. So you're not going to go over your cap. Just gaming in 4K. Basically, the way to look at it is if you haven't already gone over your cap with your current gaming habits, even buying physical media or downloading games on Steam, you're not going to go over that same cap gaming on Google Stadia. Because what extra data you use by, streaming it by the hour gets canceled out by the fact that you didn't have to download the game first. And gets canceled out by the fact that you didn't have to download, another 4 to 5 gigabyte patch for Fortnite. That you didn't have to download a day one 60 gigabyte patch for Fallout 76. Or a day one 10 gigabyte patch for Anthem. Because games are doing that now. Day one fucking patches are a thing and have been for quite some time, even on physical media. So don't think that just because you got physical media, you're safe. You're overthinking this. You're not going to go over your data cap. More than likely. I'm not saying that there aren't going to be some rare extreme cases where some guy just gamed way too much and it didn't balance out. But for the average user, if you keep your average current gaming habits, you're not going to go over your data cap. Not at the speeds they're listing. So sweep that one under the rug. And that's going to be one of those your mileage may vary kind of arguments there. But just doing the math on it, I think for a good 80 to 90% of Google users, they're never going to hit their data cap, and they aren't going to notice a difference between streaming and the way they're traditionally playing their games now. The only difference being they don't have to wait. No more firing up a game and waiting for an update before you can play. And yes, you're going to get that convenience of being able to play on any device. PC and a Chrome web browser, Chromecast Ultra. You got smartphone apps coming, tablet, smart TV, Roku streaming boxes, Apple TV, all that stuff's apparently in the works. So, now that we've got that one out of the way, then comes the ownership. People are worried that they're not going to be able to get to own their games anymore. And we're slowly getting into the business side of this, but people are worried they're not going to get to own their games anymore. And to that I say, I kind of see your point depending on the games you buy. Because if we look at the top most popular games of this year so far, you don't own any of those anyway. Even if you bought the physical copy. You bought a physical copy of Destiny 2? Well, you think you own that glorified drink coaster you're putting in your Xbox or your PS4? You don't. I mean, sure, you own the disc itself. I guess you do own the glorified drink coaster. But you don't own the game that's on it. Because the minute those servers get shut down, the game's fucking gone. And this has happened in the past already. I was one of the poor sons of bitches who bought Evolve on day one. I was hyped for that game. I wanted it. I loved it. But it performed horribly because of the way they chose to monetize it. It became the poster child for bad monetization at the time. And the game failed. And that company pulled the plug on it. So I now have a game I can't play. I mean, it's a multiplayer only game. I mean, sure, people could give the argument of, well, you still own the game. You could still put that disc in your PS4 and play against bots. Sure, but the servers are down, so you ain't going to be playing online. But is that it? Is that what you consider owning a game? This one game mode? That's what you paid $60 for? You paid $60 for the ability to archive and play this one little game mode? To not get the full experience? Because I can tell you right now, people don't want that either. Do you know how I know people don't want the ability to pay $60 to own a fraction of a game? Because those people who paid $60 for Street Fighter V and half the fucking main menu said coming soon. And they flipped their shit. You ain't owned games in a while. So why are we still paying $60 for them? Why are you forcing yourself to do that? Why are you forcing yourself to pay hundreds of dollars on a console, hundreds of dollars on PC upgrades to buy games that they can turn off whenever they're ready? And you're paying full price for them. That's what you're fighting to preserve? Why? But since we are getting into the business side of things, Google Stadia is not perfect either. It's a step in the right direction, but it has to be done properly. Right off gate, Google Stadia takes away your need for hardware. The biggest part of your gaming budget every generation sucked out immediately. You now have hundreds of extra dollars for games. Right off gate. And they give you a vast library of games for $10 a month. That's a lot of other games you now don't have to buy. It also encourages you to try games you otherwise wouldn't try because you don't have to buy them now. And we know this for a fact because people have already been doing this with Xbox Game Pass. It's how Void Bastards became the little, runaway hit that it's become. If that weren't in Xbox Game Pass, it probably would have been a cult hit at most. But because it had a good article written about it, and people didn't have to pay money to give this thing a try that was getting good reviews, more people played it than probably would have if they had to buy it. Than definitely would have if they had to buy it. And the game took off. And it's a great game. Now, I know you do still have to buy games on Google Stadia. There are going to be some games that just aren't included in that $10 a month pass, and you're going to have to buy them. And $60, I get it. It's a big ask for a copy of a game that isn't on your hardware. For a copy of a game on a subscription service that hasn't established itself yet. that you might not trust not to shut down. And I get where that fear comes from. Google does have a habit of shutting down things. Not too long ago, they shut down YouTube Gaming. Kind of, but not really. I mean, they discontinued the app and that portion of their website, but it's not like gaming videos aren't still super popular on YouTube. That's one of those things they shut down because people just weren't using it. So, but they have shut down other things that were completely separate and their own thing and looked like they might be going well, and then they shut them down. So I get that. Google does have that habit. But if anybody has the money to back this and try to make it work, it's Google. And yeah, there's going to be some risk involved with a new service. But if Google doesn't do it, if you don't support Google and it's not Google that does it, it's going to be someone else. EA already has their service. Xbox is launching their service. Ubisoft's launching their service. And that brings me to the problem. I worry there's going to be too many services. And I want to see Google, if you're listening, Google, here's how you do this. You've got YouTube down to a fucking science on monetization of that platform and keeping it free for everybody and keeping it so people don't have to pay for subscriptions or don't have to buy videos. And you're still making buttloads of money. Put some of that power behind Stadia. You have to make your service stand out from those other companies, and you have to give them an incentive to put their games on your subscription model instead of making their own. Now, I've got a few ideas for this, but honestly, you guys are smarter than I am. You'll figure something out. Just don't make it intrusive. Make it organic. Maybe you go the YouTube route and you do ad revenue. You know, put advertisements over top of loading screens. And then no gameplay is missed. And these companies get a kickback every time that ad is played. So the longer people play their games, the more money they make. That's a win-win for everybody. I know nobody wants ads in their games, but you got to weigh the lesser of two evils on this one. What do you want in your game? Microtransactions and loot boxes, or advertisements as loading screens? I would personally pick the advertisements. If I'm only going to be staring at a loading screen anyway, throw it in there. If it's a game that doesn't have loading screens and you just find clever ways to sneak ads into the game, maybe, you know, you pull up the menu screen and there's a little banner ad at the bottom or something like that. I'm cool with that. If it keeps microtransactions and loot boxes out of my game, I'm cool with that. Put those ads in there.
But the only problem with that is the whole... well, once they find you can accept that. Here's a loading screen for going in a door. Here's a loading screen for going out a door. Here's a loading screen for opening your menu. Here's a loading screen for closing your menu.
Well, see, that's why Google needs to be in charge of the ads, so they can't do that. Because if they do it the way they do it on YouTube, there's a limit to how many ads you can put on X minutes of watch time. So you basically have to have at least a 10-minute long video on YouTube to put an ad in the middle of the video. Otherwise, people watch the video with no interruption. If it's under 10 minutes, you can't put an ad in the middle of the video. You can only put it at the beginning and at the end.
Yeah.
So if they put those same restrictions on gameplay, on time spent, then making all those extra loading screens doesn't get you extra ads. It's just going to get you shitty reviews and cause people not to play your game. So a balance would be struck there. If Google says, okay, per hour of gameplay, only this many, ads can play. And then the developers will find clever ways to put them in there. And maybe they find other ways to get some ad revenue too. I mean, fuck, Street Fighter's already experimenting with it, with their fucking branded content on the characters.
Product placement.
Yeah, product placement and company logos on their fucking uniforms. There's some clever ways companies could do that and start getting some of that sweet, sweet Google AdSense money. Maybe your character's You know, it's a story-driven game. Maybe your character's walking past a TV in a department store or in the living room of his house, and the TV's on, and instead of playing some fake commercial or some fake news broadcast, you just play a real commercial on that television while the person's playing the game. So they just hear it in the background, and they can choose to, you know, interact with it or not. It adds realism to the game because you're showing real brands on there. You're showing real commercials on TV in the background of the game. If it's a racing game, you throw up some billboards. You know, there's ways you can squeeze that stuff in without being intrusive and without ruining the game. And Google has the partnerships and the ability to get these companies that kind of
movies have been doing that for years.
Yeah, to fund the movie, to fund the game. You know, and they could do this to fund the game. There have been a few deals where that happened, but not to this extent I'm talking. I mean, obviously, you got back on PS1, you got the likes of like Pepsi Man and Cool Spot having a game. And then you've had a couple of games where they do use brand names and they got a little kickback. But it's not super common. And I'm thinking maybe it should be. I'm fine with that. It would add that realism to the game. Because I get confused and tired of seeing made-up companies in video games. Because I'm like, why don't you just use a real company? You'd get money, I'd get less microtransactions. It's a win-win scenario across the board for everybody. Just do that. And that could be a feature of putting your game on Google Stadia. Because Google already has the partnerships with these advertisers. So, yeah, EA or Ubisoft could choose to put that game on their streaming service, but they'd be missing out on all that ad money if they did. So they'd be the companies relying on gamers to pay their bills instead of advertisement companies. Whereas these developers who chose to put their games on Google Stadia would get ad money, and then they'd be less incentivized to rely on microtransactions. So you may start to see the opposite happen, where these companies advertise a lack of microtransactions as a selling point for their game, instead of talking about how the microtransactions aren't going to be bothersome to some people, instead of trying to find ways to put them in anyway. So there's a way, a business model and a way that Google Stadia could become the hero gaming deserves, if you will. You're cutting costs across the board with console prices and hardware upgrades on PC. Those are a thing of the past now. So people of any budget can now have access to any game. So you're leveling the playing field right off gate with this. 2, you're taking away the need to purchase games themselves if they're part of that subscription-based model. And I know there's an argument to be made about ownership, and that's a different conversation, because that's not a Google Stadia conversation. That's a developer-publisher conversation. You haven't owned games for a while, and you've been lying to yourself if you believe you have. If you believe that copy of Overwatch you hold in your hand, you put in your PS4 is yours, the minute Blizzard turns off those Overwatch servers, you don't have a fucking game anymore. Call of Duty Black Ops 4 is online only. You don't have that anymore. These are popular, massively selling games over the last year that you don't own. And yeah, it will suck to not be able to own some games anymore. The ones you could own, like Spider-Man on PS4. You know, your single player experiences. It would suck to not have those, to not have that option anymore. But compromises have to be made if you want this change that you've all been screaming about for so long. And taking a step back and resisting that urge to resist change that so many people have, where they just want to resist change. And that's what a lot of these videos feel like, people resisting change because it's different. Not because it's bad, or not because, you know, it's a threat to their wallet, or it's bad for business, but because it's different. The same thing happened back in the PS1 era when online play was first starting to get introduced. People had that whole scare. Articles were written back then about a single player was dead. You know, RPGs are all going to be MMOs now, etc., etc. People always do this. You always overreach. You always overreact to whatever trend is there. And if you can take a step back and you can forget all that for a moment and you can just look at it for the product and service it is and compare it to the way the industry is currently being run, the positives far outweigh the negatives. If Google does this right. Now, I'll admit it's a slippery slope and they need to proceed with caution. And that this must be done correctly or it will fail. And it will become the poster child of failure if it does. I mean, if Google doesn't do this right and it fails, it is going to fail in a spectacular fashion. It's going to be the go-to example of how streaming is bad. It's going to be demonized and it's going to put us in another 10 years of $60 games with $50 DLC and microtransactions and all the shit you currently hate. It's going to give us 10 more years of that at least if Google fails, because you're going to go through another console generation or two before they say we're ready yet. It's going to be at least 5 years. Console generation is usually 5 years. So that's what you're going to see, is you're going to see more harm coming from its failure than good. You should be rooting for this to succeed on some level. I'm not saying it needs to succeed to the level that it replaces the need for consoles for anybody ever. I'm not saying that there's not still a place for both, but it needs to succeed on a level that the world can see that there is a place for both. That your budget gamers can jump on $10 a month for Google Stadia and get to play what they want to play that they otherwise wouldn't have the budget or the money to. The other thing it can do right, if it pulls this off properly, gets its thumb out of its ass and works with these other companies and doesn't get too competitive, is crossplay. And I know it already kind of feels like crossplay because of the fact that you can play it on any device, but I mean real crossplay. Logging in to Destiny 2 on your Google Stadia and hopping in a game with somebody on PC who downloaded the game and isn't streaming it, to hop into a game with somebody on Xbox One or PS4. We all have agreed at this point, ever since Fortnite and Rocket League and, Minecraft and these games that have going cross-platform, we've all agreed that the gaming experience with all those games is better that way than locking everybody behind all these walled gardens. So I have to own multiple copies of a game and multiple systems to play with my multitude of friends who all have different hardware. Giving everybody the chance to play with everybody. We've reached that point in gaming where most games are online now anyway, so the hardware isn't as important. Yeah, we can do that, and we should be doing that more. We've all agreed that's a good thing. We've all agreed we want crossplay, and Google will be the gateway drug to help get us there if their cards are played correctly. I mean, Destiny's already announced that it's going to launch for Google Stadia with cross-save functionality. Not cross-play, cross-save, but that's a step in the right direction towards crossplay. They did say they have crossplay on their roadmap. But when articles start getting written about the convenience of that feature alone, all that's going to do is just continue the push for crossplay. And when Destiny players or Warframe players or Overwatch or Fortnite or whoever, when these
World of Warcraft,
World of Warcraft,
all these online games,
when those players start writing articles and start boasting and start falling in love with the fact that they don't have to play on the same device every time they play, even if they're playing with different people when they're playing on Google Stadia than when they're playing on their PC, the fact that they can turn off their PC, whip out their smartphone with Google Stadia and log into that same account and continue playing, that's going to spoil people. That is a gateway drug to crossplay. Even though, yes, if I turn off Destiny on my PC and I whip out my tablet at a doctor's office to pick up where I left off with that same character, I won't be playing with the same friends list. You know, I'll see Ozzy here on PC and I'll be unable to join him, sure. But the fact that I can still do that and still grind a little bit and still have access to my character, it's a step. It's that first baby step needed to get there. And that's going to spoil people. That's like your first hit free when it comes to the world of crossplay. That's their first little taste of it. And once you've had that, you can't go back. I can tell you right now, it's hard to go back. I've been playing Minecraft for the last couple weeks here. Just waiting for the release of Mario Maker 2. Killing some time with the wife. But I've been playing Mario Maker. And we've been playing cross-platform. We chose the Bedrock edition of the game for the cross-platform play because we wanted to host a server where, we can just log in and all play together no matter what. No more worrying about mods and the right version of the game. We just wanted the log in, log out kind of gameplay. So Ozzy here is playing on his Switch. My wife's on an Xbox One. I'm on Windows 10, whatever. And that spoils you for the Minecraft experience. That I can turn off my computer and I can lay there in bed, whip out my phone and check in on my server and, harvest my crops or whatever and log out. Or I can just log in and just keep going to the same character, the same world I've been building. Except when I turn on my PS4. Because the PS4 doesn't have crossplay for Minecraft yet. And it has me not wanting to play that version of the game despite the fact that I've paid money for it. It feels pointless to turn on Minecraft on my PS4. Because I don't have access to all the things I've spent hours building. And people definitely will get used to that. They'll get used to that, all my hard work, especially with all these grindy online games. No one wants to have to start over because they wanted to play with a different friend on a different console. Especially with games like Minecraft or fucking Warframe. If you've sunk hundreds of hours into Warframe and you've talked your friend into getting it and then he calls you up and he's like, yeah, download it on my PS4 and you've been playing on PC, well, you're fucked. You really want to start over just to play with that one guy? You really want to juggle multiple characters so you can play with your multiple friends who have multiple different consoles or hardware that they're playing on? Maybe you got a friend who can't afford a PC. Maybe you got a friend who can't afford, PS4, or somebody gave him an Xbox One or whatever. Maybe he's on a Switch. We're past that point in gaming, I feel. And not including crossplay is just going to be a stain on the reputation of your game. So Google Stadia, even though it doesn't have crossplay, it feels like it does. Because that ability to log in and play on any device with your game gives you the illusion of having crossplay. The log in, play anywhere feeling. You get that feeling. And if Google Stadia gets in the hands of as many people as I'm hoping it will, the gaming community as a whole will get used to that feeling of not having to worry about which system they're firing their game up on. Because with Google, you don't have to worry about that. You're not going to be firing the game up on your PC and playing on a different account. It's all going to be the same. Whether you're on your PC or your television or your smartphone or your tablet, it's all going to be the same. So then when people switch from Google Stadia back to a traditional console and run into a game where they can't do that, it's going to feel weird to them. And it should, because we're past that point in gaming. And if Google wants to be successful with this and make that work, that part of the platform is built in. That's its main selling feature. No, it's not crossplay, but it feels like it's crossplay. In the way they make a veggie burger look like a real burger. We all know it's not a real burger, but they try to make it look like one so that you don't feel weird eating it. That's what Google Stadia is doing. It's not cross-play, but the fact that you can play it on so many different devices feels like it should be. And it's that feeling that I feel will push cross-play into becoming a more standard thing. Now, if Google wants to make this work, and I hope they do, because you should be excited for it. You should be hyped for it. You should be promoting the shit out of it. Because it is the change gaming needs. All those bad things you've seen in all those videos about Google Stadia, about not being able to own your games, about data caps, about all... They're valid complaints to a point, but I think everyone is severely overreacting. You don't own the majority of your games now, unless you're a big indie game player. Overwatch, you bought that, you don't own it. Call of Duty Black Ops 4, you bought that, you don't own it. Destiny 2, you bought that, you don't own it. Your Fortnite account, don't own it. Doesn't matter how much money you spent on it. Your Apex Legends account, doesn't matter how much money you spent on it, don't own it. I could go on. And even the games you do, quote unquote, own, the majority of the game would feel useless if they turn the servers off. So you still don't own the whole game anymore. Those days of buying a game and owning the complete gaming experience for that game that we had back in the Super Nintendo N64 days, those days are long fucking gone. You know, even if you bought a physical copy of Street Fighter V, the majority of that game is focused on its online mode. Yeah, there's a story mode now, and yeah, there's local versus mode. But the main draw of the game, Mortal Kombat 11, the main draw of the game, the online multiplayer, all those unlocks. There's even a couple game modes that don't work unless you're online. Towers in the Crypt. All those unlocks, all those cosmetics, all those things you grind for in Mortal Kombat 11. If you bought the physical copy of that game and you don't have internet, you don't have that game. Not really. You've got a demo at that point. So those people bitching about not being able to own their games, you don't own them now. You're overreacting. You're just showing the world that you're a sucker. That you've fallen for the current business model of games. And they've tricked you. They've tricked you into believing you own an online-only game by selling you a disc for it. A disc that contains nothing, really. Because you bring the game home and you still got to install it to your hard drive and download all these fucking patches. So there's really nothing on the disc. It's a placebo effect. The ownership of games in the year 2019 is mostly a placebo effect. So you should be pushing for Google Stadia. You want it to succeed. Now, I think the way that it'll succeed and the best way for people to show Google how to make this work and show the industry where we want this to go is to buy Google Stadia. You should all pre-order it. You should all support it. It's cheap. It's priced right. It's got a lot of good things going for it. Support the good parts. And don't give money to the bad parts. Buy Google Stadia. Buy your subscription to Google Stadia Pro. Show them you want the subscription service. And then, if you're legitimately worried about ownership of games, don't buy any games on Stadia. Don't spend the $60 to buy a game on Stadia when they're selling a game. Just subscribe to the service and use the games they give you for free. And when they notice that the vast majority of their users aren't buying games anymore, they want a subscription-based model, well, that'll give them the data they need to push that business in the direction that I mentioned, where they start finding other ways to share that profit with developers. So those developers will put their games on the subscription service instead of putting them up for sale. Now, whether that be ad revenue from putting an advertisement over top of a loading screen or putting a little banner ad at the bottom of your pause menu or something, some in-game advertisements like a billboard in a racing game or, a company logo on a jacket. Now, that's something they'll have to figure out. But I do think I'd rather see advertisements in my video games. if I got my video games for $10 a month on a subscription service. And I'm not saying microtransactions need to completely go away, but if I'm only paying $10 a month to access, you know, the next Call of Duty or Overwatch 2 or whatever, the next big name game, if I'm not having to pay $60 to access that game, it's just part of a subscription I'm already paying, I'd be more inclined to spend money on microtransactions if I'm not spending $60 to have to look at the microtransaction store to begin with. These are all those positive changes that gamers have been bitching about and claiming they've wanted for years now. And Google Stadia could be the gateway to getting that to you, or at least softening the blow. Because I hate to break it to you, at our current industry standard $60 game price and the current, system we have, we're still getting a shitload of microtransactions. Loot boxes show no signs of going away, even if you change their names to Surprise Mechanics or whatever other friendly name they're trying to rebrand them as. These companies have proved that they have no interest in getting rid of those things in your games. It doesn't matter how much you pay for them. You can't give these companies enough money to bribe them into taking them away from their games. They're going to rebrand them. They're going to find ways to put them back in. They're going to find ways to keep monetizing their games once they have you logged in and playing them. And if that's the direction we're going anyway, then what we can do is get rid of the $60 price tag we need to walk into their fucking in-game store. Because right now, video games are the equivalent of a Microsoft store with a cover charge. Do you imagine that, walking into the Apple store and there's a $10 cover charge to even get in there to spend money? Would you go in? Would you walk into an Apple store if you had to pay money to get in the store? Would you walk into a Microsoft store? Nintendo store? Any store? A fucking Build-A-Bear workshop. These are video games, not nightclubs. I shouldn't have to pay money to log into your game so you can advertise to me and sell me more shit. So since that's what games are, and they show no signs of getting rid of that, no matter how much we prove we don't like it, and no matter how much we prove that we are willing to pay for things that are worth it, like actual DLC and actual content, these microtransaction shops and loot boxes aren't going away. So you all should be supporting a subscription-based model for gaming as much as possible, so that all that money you save on hardware cost, all that money you save on purchasing your video games at $60 a pop, you can spend to support the game you are enjoying. You can spend on some microtransactions. And then we'll revisit the topic in a year or two when that business model works. And then we can redefine what are acceptable microtransactions and what aren't. Because you know they're going to overreach and we're going to have to try to put them in check again. But for now, we're better off getting rid of all the upfront charges. Getting rid of all the cover charges and the walled gardens. And can we stop focusing on brand recognition, brand loyalty, console wars, launcher wars, PC wars, whatever? Can we stop focusing on all that shit and just focus on the thing that we're all here for to begin with? The fucking games. I don't know, maybe that's just me. I never got into that back in the day when there was the whole Nintendo versus Sega thing. I never got into it during the PS1 era, PS2 era, PS3 era, none of that. I have no loyalty to any company that doesn't know my name. I'm just a number on a piece of paper to them, so why should they be anything more than just a delivery method for video games for me? And that's the way I see it. I don't care what console or launcher you put something on. If your game is good, I will buy it. Simple as that. And if you make it so I don't have to buy multiple consoles to enjoy all the games I want to play, that'd be great. That'd be just awesome. It'd be so much money saved. Right now I have an Xbox One, a Switch, a PS4, 2 PCs, 3DS, PS3. You know, I got all this fucking shit. At one point, we even had 2 PS4s. Just so my wife could play with me. That's too much shit to buy. Because I gotta have this system if I want to play this game, and this system if I want to play that game. And now it's even like that on PC, where I gotta download this launcher if I want to play this game, and this launcher if I want to play that game. And no, I'm not just talking about Steam and Epic. Ubisoft's got a launcher. Origin's got a launcher. You know, EA's got Origin. Bethesda's got a launcher. Everybody's got a fucking launcher now. It doesn't matter where I bought the game. So, I don't care. I don't care where you put your game. Do whatever makes the most business sense for you. A good game's a good game. I'll buy it. But if we could have an ecosystem that didn't require purchasing hardware to access whatever store you chose to put your game on, then you'll sell more copies of that game, period. You have access to a wider audience. It's just statistics. Why sell to just the PS4 crowd when you could sell to everybody? Why sell to just the PC crowd when you could sell to everybody? So crossplay and streaming should go hand in hand. They should be the future. And hopefully they should do away with having to purchase games at $60 a pop. Which I think we have a legitimate argument for and a legitimate chance of that going away with people's big complaint that we're not owning the games we're buying anymore. Now that people are finally starting to realize that it took Google to open your eyes to that practice that's already happening. It's not just a Google Stadia thing. We already don't own games. But I'm glad you realize that now. And now that you do, maybe we can start the fight to get rid of paying to purchase something we don't own anymore. I think we're ready for game streaming. If Google's hardware, if Google's servers, if Google's service can deliver on what it said it can deliver on, then we're ready. And if not, well, get ready to cash that tax return check on 3 more consoles, 4 more online subscriptions, so you can play your games with your friends for 5 more years. God, feels like a shitty election, doesn't it? Alright, so that's my rant. You guys buy what you want to buy, put your money where you want to put it. But now you know the truth about Google Stadia, the potential behind it. Don't fall for the negative hype train. That's all I'm saying. Treat this the same way you treat a regular election, or should treat a regular election. You shouldn't be looking at how cool the person is or whether or not you can have a beer with them. You shouldn't be looking at how cool Google Stadia is or, you know, whether or not it's the popular choice. You should look at what it's bringing to the table and if you think it's good for gaming. I'm on board. I think Ozzy's on board. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just doing my outro.
No, I was just agreeing with you that it will have to eventually just see how it goes.
I think we're ready. In all honesty, I've seen this storm coming for years upon years. I've subscribed to services like this in the past, and they've all gone under. But you're talking 10 years ago in the past. I had a rather large collection on OnLive, which is an online-only game streaming service very similar to Stadia. It's the one that's being used as the big comparison. And they went under. I think PlayStation bought their servers and turned it into PlayStation Now. Xbox bought some other company that went under. So there have been a few of these pop up, but the technology wasn't there yet. Even NVIDIA's got their NVIDIA Now service, which I'm a beta tester of, and I occasionally use it. But all those other services required such heavy internet and, weren't compressing the video. They were trying to give you pixel perfect resolution. And I don't think we're there yet to get a pixel perfect gameplay experience. I think the biggest example I heard used from everyone who experienced it at E3 was they said it felt like you were playing a YouTube video of the game instead of playing the game itself. So take that for what it is. But a YouTube video at 1080p looks pretty good to me, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. Google's pretty much mastered the art of compressing and streaming media at this point. Remember, they own YouTube. So if they can apply that same technology to video games, and it looks like they can, then I think we're ready. Yeah, you're playing a streamed video, and it's apparently noticeable to where you feel like you're playing a YouTube video of the game instead of playing the game itself. But if it works and it's a smooth, lag-free experience, I think a lot of people that won't be bothered by that. I really do. So many people are so used to watching so much stuff streamed now that it doesn't bother them. I mean, you're talking about the equivalent of watching a movie on Blu-ray versus watching a streamed version of that same movie on Netflix at the same resolution. Yeah, there's a difference. The one on Blu-ray is going to be a little bit crisper. It's going to look better because you're not compressing any of the video data before it gets to your television. You're just watching it raw. But that still didn't stop streaming from becoming the standard, did it? Most people still choose Netflix over a Blu-ray. So I think gaming's in the same boat and finally ready to go there. And I can't think of anyone better to put in the hands of taking streamed video to video games than Google. I mean, they own YouTube. They know what they're doing when it comes to streaming video. The input was the part everyone was worried about, and according to the people at E3, the input, true to form, as promised, doesn't lag. So, if they've mastered those two things and they've nailed it, I'm on board. And from the business side of things, this can be done in a way that's good for everybody. Even if they don't put ads in the games and we're still stuck with microtransactions and loot boxes and other forms of monetization, the amount of money you saved not buying consoles anymore or buying hardware upgrades anymore to access that game means you have more money to spend on those microtransactions and to buy the stuff you want without feeling like you're being ripped off in the process. Like I said, we'll have to have another conversation about what's an acceptable microtransaction in games if that's the business model we go to. You know, pay to win's always going to suck, even if you only paid $10 a month to access that pay to win feature. A pay to win feature kills a game, I think, no matter how much you paid for it.
Yeah.
But if you only paid $10 a month and that game was like Destiny or some, Fortnite or some game that just had a cosmetic shop and some fun DLC to spend money on, well, you'd be more willing to spend that money on that DLC. If it was part of your subscription, you didn't pay $60 to play it on a $500 console, $400 console, whatever. If you had, $460 extra to spend because you didn't have to buy a console and a copy of the game before having access to that in-game shop they're trying to sell you those cosmetics in, or in Destiny's case, they're trying to sell you that DLC in, then you'll be more willing to buy that Forsaken expansion. And you won't bitch about it being $40, because even if you paid $40, you still didn't have to buy a console to access it, and you still didn't have to pay $60 to access it. So you're still coming out cheaper. You still have money left over. It's still a win for everybody. The devs get more people purchasing that stuff and more players, so win for them. You save money even if you're buying $40 expansions. Win for you. And Google gets their subscribers and more users and kickbacks. Win for them too. So unless you just really enjoy spending hundreds upon hundreds of dollars on hardware and video games, there's no reason not to get Stadia. Don't believe all the negative videos throwing false numbers out there about data caps and speeds and just people who clearly don't understand how this technology and how streaming works being scared of it. I do this for a living. Went to college for this. Networking is my specialty. It's what I do. And I get these calls from people every day who don't understand how it works and they're scared someone's taking their data because, you know, they connected to their Wi-Fi, or they're scared that they have too many devices connected to their Wi-Fi and it's going to make their internet slow. People who just clearly don't understand the technology. So don't believe the videos of people who don't understand the technology being scared about things that honestly are non-problems. If you're interested in it, and you're interested in not paying more money for video games and streaming in general, then it's earned your money already, and you should support it. If you don't like the idea of not playing on your own hardware, some people are, you know, enthusiasts and purists who want to play on their own hardware, who want to have the option of configuring their own system or owning their own console and, you know, showing off this or that. Then keep gaming the way you're gaming. But for the rest of us, I think this is a better option. So that's your AAA Hole podcast for this week. We're at an hour here, and I think I've covered all the points I need to cover on this. I meant to make this more of a discussion, but it just kind of turned into a rant. But there's the truth about Google Stadia.
And you heard him. That should be the last we should hear of it,
yes,
right?
Yes, it should be the last you should hear of it. But yeah, there's a fork in the road. Pick your path and support it. And don't let any other videos or anything talk you out of it. Google's a cheap thing to support right now. Even if you throw money into it to support it, you're not going to be losing a whole lot. So you're really only losing money on the controller. If you choose to buy the controller, if you choose to do the Founders Edition, you're really only losing money on the controller. Because that Chromecast Ultra is just a Chromecast Ultra. You'll have other uses for that. And the controller is not really much of a loss either. Because it's still a Bluetooth controller that works with all your devices, so you can still use it. So really you're not losing anything by supporting it, so support it. If you're thinking you might use a Chromecast anyway, yeah, support it. Need an extra controller for your PC or mobile device? Support it. Use it. Give it a chance. Or you can take the other path and say, I like all the hype around a new console and I like buying a shiny new box to put under my television once every 5 years. And support that. But vote with your wallet, not with what some asshole on YouTube told you some technical spec was, or not because it's unpopular. Not because, you know, don't jump on that train. Be a fucking individual. Have a goddamn mind. That's your AAA Hole for this week. Thanks for listening, everybody. I'll see you guys next week about something other than Google Stadia. Goodbye, everybody.
See you, man. See you guys.